She didn't look out of place, but she wasn't supposed to stay. One flight delay, and she found herself behind the counter instead of in the air. What began as a favor to an old friend would become a quiet reckoning in glass and marble. A single day that turned judgment into revelation. By nightfall, the woman serving champagne to billionaires would be the one flying above them. Calm, composed, and untouchable. At 40,000 feet, elegance would meet its lesson, and humility, its reward. The Doha International Executive Lounge glowed like a temple of money, glass, marble, and silence so controlled it felt rehearsed. Conversations floated, hushed and deliberate, the air perfumed with citrus polish and imported coffee beans. Somewhere, a cello played faintly through the speakers, elegant and unintrusive, as if it too were afraid of offending the clientele. Behind the marble counter, a woman moved with quiet precision, wiping, arranging, resetting. Tara Bennett. Her hair was neatly tied, her uniform pressed, though the name tag wasn't hers. It read Elena. She didn't look out of place, but she wasn't meant to stay. One flight delay, and she'd found herself behind the counter instead of in the air. To anyone watching, she was just another attendant. Polite, composed, a face that blended neatly into the service architecture of the elite. But there was something different about her composure. Not the trained courtesy of staff, but the calm of someone used to command. She noticed the small details no one else did. The trembling water in a glass when the runway tremored. The pilot at the corner table checking his reflection more than his espresso. The subtle tension in the posture of passengers waiting for a weather clearance that delayed half the day's flights. "Thank you, miss," a businessman muttered absently when she set down his drink. "You're welcome," Tara replied, her tone gentle but precise, the kind of voice that carried even in low volume. At the far end, the lounge manager, Lena, glanced toward her gratefully. Tara returned a small, knowing nod. Old friends. But that story belonged to another hour. For now, Tara just moved through the haze of idle luxury. She refilled champagne flutes, aligned magazines by their spines, and accepted the invisible boundary that came with her borrowed uniform, the one separating service from stature. Still, her eyes occasionally drifted toward the runway, to the parked Gulf Streams gleaming in the desert sun. She had spent half her career designing components that powered aircraft like those. But no one here would guess that. The intercom chimed softly. "Attention, passengers of Harland Private Flight 7A. Departure delayed by 45 minutes due to connecting weather systems over Zurich." A sigh rippled through the lounge, irritation disguised as grace. Tara caught the name instantly. Harland, the family behind some of the most aggressive aerospace investment portfolios in Europe. She turned back to her task, a new bottle of champagne, chilled to the exact temperature. The glass sang a quiet note when it touched the counter. Somewhere above, a plane lifted into the copper sky, its reflection sliding across the lounge's polished floor. Tara watched it fade, her expression unreadable. It had started that morning, just as her connecting flight to London was cancelled. Tara was sitting in the cafe across from the executive terminal when Lena spotted her. Same quick stride, same anxious half-smile she used to have back when they were roommates in a two-bedroom flat in Bristol. "Tara?" "Bennett?" Tara had looked up from her tablet, surprised. Lena Morgan, of all places. They laughed softly, their voices overlapping in that easy way old friends did. Then Lena's expression turned urgent. "Two of my attendants called in sick. We've got back-to-back VIPs arriving. I'm drowning, Tara. Please, just for a few hours." Tara blinked. "You want me to play hostess?" "Just until the afternoon flights leave. I know it's absurd, but you're the only person here who knows how this crowd thinks. You used to design jets, for heaven's sake." Tara hesitated only a moment. Her own aircraft parts conference had been delayed by weather. She had the time. "All right," she said finally, her tone steady. "But if I spill champagne, it's on your record." Now, hours later, Tara was living out that promise. Discreet, efficient, invisible. She took quiet pride in it, though it wasn't her world anymore. Lena approached the counter, wiping her forehead. "You've saved me today. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything," Tara replied, arranging a tray of pastries with clinical precision. "You gave me your sofa once when I couldn't afford rent." "This is nothing." Lena's smile softened, but her gaze darted toward the glass doors. "Careful, the Harlands just walked in." Tara followed her glance. First came Monica Harland, stepping with deliberate grace, hair perfectly sculpted, eyes scanning the room with that casual disinterest born of entitlement. Diamonds flashed at her throat, understated only in the way that wealth flaunts itself by pretending not to. Behind her walked Richard Harland, tall, serious, his tablet already open to a presentation he barely looked at. Their presence changed the air. Conversations dimmed slightly. The staff straightened without being told. The reflex of people who had learned that money noticed posture. "Good afternoon." "Mr. and Mrs. Harland," Lena greeted with practiced warmth. Monica smiled faintly. "Let's just find a quiet corner." "I can't stand this delay." Tara stepped forward with a tray. "Welcome, ma'am. Would you care for a glass of—" But Monica's gaze had already shifted, evaluating her as one might inspect fabric quality. "Sure," she said finally, without meeting her eyes. "Just don't spill it." She had faced worse turbulence before, just never on the ground. Tara steadied the tray against her palm, the champagne flutes balanced like crystal notes in midair. She approached the Harlands' table with quiet poise, the kind that didn't ask for acknowledgement. The glass trembled once as a heavy aircraft taxied nearby, its engines rolling thunder through the floor. Tara compensated instinctively, subtle wrist adjustments smooth as second nature. Years of field testing under pressure left their traces in small gestures. Monica Harland barely looked up. "Put it there," she murmured, scrolling through her phone. Her accent was crisp, London private school sharp. Richard was different, quieter, analytical. He closed a document on his tablet marked Bennett Aerotech. Proposal. Hybrid Propulsion Partnership. The logo was small, blue and modern. His expression flickered briefly, curiosity, focus, then returned to polite detachment. Tara set the drinks down carefully. "Your champagne, ma'am, sir." Monica glanced up just in time to see Tara wipe a single droplet of condensation from the glass's stem. "Attention to detail," she remarked dryly, as though it were both a compliment and an accusation. Lena appeared again, smiling nervously. "Is everything to your liking, Mrs. Harland?" Monica replied. "The place is lovely. Though I must say," she gestured vaguely toward Tara, "you've added—" "New staff since last time," Lena hesitated. "Just helping hands for today." "Ah." Monica's lips curved, sharp as a diamond edge. "Well, one must take what one can get, I suppose." Tara heard it, the words layered in civility, coated with subtle condescension. She had seen that expression before in boardrooms. People who believed elegance exempted them from empathy. She didn't flinch. She simply inclined her head slightly, voice steady. "Would you like anything else, ma'am?" But just as she turned, a tremor from a departing A350 rumbled beneath the lounge. The champagne tray vibrated, one glass tipping. A single golden drop landed on the corner of Monica's silk scarf. The room stilled. Even the cello seemed to draw breath. Monica's smile froze in place. "Well," she said softly, "some people simply aren't built for precision." "You can always tell." Richard looked up from his screen, caught between embarrassment and resignation. He didn't intervene, just watched. Lena hurried over. "I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Harland. It was the vibration." Monica waved her off. "Of course. But perhaps next time, let's ensure only trained staff handle service. Presentation matters, doesn't it?" Tara's fingers tightened briefly around the tray, then relaxed. Her voice, when it came, was calm enough to chill the air. "You're absolutely right, ma'am. Precision does matter," and with that she turned away. Her steps perfectly even. Richard followed her with his eyes, something unreadable flickering behind his practiced reserve, as if he recognized the discipline beneath her silence. Monica dabbed the edge of her scarf with an embroidered napkin, every motion slow and deliberate. "Lena, dear," she said lightly, "you really must be careful whom you hire. Appearances, you know." Her tone was airy, but the precision in it was surgical. Across the room, a waiter paused mid-step, pretending not to hear. The cello music resumed, trying to stitch elegance back over discomfort. Tara said nothing. She'd learned long ago that silence unsettled arrogance more than apology ever could. She collected her tray, each glass clicking softly in rhythm with her controlled breath. Lena followed her behind the counter, voice hushed. "I'm so sorry, Tara. She's exactly what she looks like." Tara allowed herself a small smile. "Don't worry about it. I've had clients snap at me over billion-dollar prototypes. One scarf doesn't rank. Still, her eyes betrayed a flicker, not of shame, but memory. The years she'd spent earning her place in rooms where men twice her age debated whether she was worth the contract. The dozens of polished voices that had called her miss while signing checks under her name. Lena exhaled shakily. You always kept your grace. I don't know how you do it. Grace is efficient, Tara said quietly, sliding the tray into its rack. It saves time explaining yourself to people who won't listen anyway. At the corner table, Monica reclined in her seat, clearly pleased that the moment had settled in her favor. Richard was still scrolling through the Bennett Aerotech document, frowning slightly. He paused, reading the first line of the executive summary, Chief Executive Officer, Tara L. Bennett. He looked up again, gaze flicking unconsciously toward the counter. The name, the composure, the tone of voice. Something didn't add up. Monica, he said, you might want to ease up. These lounges record everything for service audits. She raised a brow. And maybe not everyone here is just staff. His voice carried no accusation, just quiet pragmatism. Monica gave a soft laugh. Oh, Richard, please. You're too cautious. I can recognize class when I see it. The irony hung between them, unacknowledged. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly, the kind that didn't come from the sky but from engines throttling on the tarmac. The storm system over Zurich had caused a ripple effect. Dozens of flights were now delayed, including the Harlands. When Tara passed by again with fresh towels, Monica didn't look at her. She didn't have to. The hierarchy had been reasserted, at least in her mind. But Richard watched her leave the room, his expression thoughtful. He didn't know yet why the name Bennett echoed in his files, but something told him this quiet woman wasn't where she belonged. 2 hours later, the Harlands were escorted from the lounge to their waiting Gulfstream, its polished silver frame reflecting the soft amber of runway lights. Rain hadn't reached Doha, but the storm over Zurich had snarled air traffic across half of Europe. The crew stood ready, engines humming in low anticipation. Monica sank into the leather seat, exhaling as though the air around her had finally improved. Honestly, that lounge needs better screening, she muttered. Anyone can slip behind a counter these days. Richard didn't answer. He was reading again, the same Bennett Aerotech proposal. The words pulled at him. Hybrid propulsion, lightweight titanium assemblies, the kind of engineering detail written by someone who knew the inside of a jet, not just its profit margin. The author's name tugged at the edge of recognition. The pilot's voice came through the cabin speakers. Apologies for the delay, sir, ma'am. We're waiting for one final passenger, a connecting VIP from the terminal. Monica's head lifted sharply. A what? We booked this flight privately. Yes, ma'am, the pilot said carefully. But the addition was authorized by your company's main office. A representative joining you en route to London. Richard frowned, glancing out the oval window. Did they say who? No, sir. Only initials. T. Bennett. The sound landed like a pin dropped in velvet. Richard froze. Monica blinked, puzzled. Who? She asked, already irritated, but Richard didn't answer. He just turned slowly toward the window, watching as a black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided across the runway lights. Stopping beside their jet, the door opened. A silhouette emerged. Heels, black suit. Purposeful stride, the same woman from the lounge. For a breathless moment, neither Monica nor Richard spoke. Outside the cabin window, the Rolls-Royce gleamed under floodlights, its polished surface catching streaks of gold and silver as ground crew hurried into motion. The engine's low hum deepened, a throaty purr that vibrated through the cabin floor. A uniformed officer stepped forward, opening the car door. Then, with the unhurried certainty of someone long accustomed to eyes following her, Tara Bennett stepped out. Gone was the borrowed uniform. In its place, a tailored black suit that framed her composure like armor, a silk blouse the color of winter dawn, hair pinned neatly back. Her heels clicked against the tarmac in steady rhythm, not loud, not hesitant, measured. Crew members straightened instinctively, postures sharpening as she approached. One of them, the same pilot who had briefed the Harlands minutes earlier, moved toward her with a salute. Ms. Bennett, welcome aboard. Monica's lips parted slightly, confusion rippling through her expression. Ms. Bennett? She whispered, almost to herself. Richard's hand lowered from his chin, realization dawning slow and heavy. Bennett Aerotech, the proposal. The leadership bio he'd half-skimmed that morning. The same voice that had written with sharp technical clarity, not corporate jargon, but the authority of invention. Outside, Tara paused near the stairs. The wind caught a strand of hair, brushed it across her cheek. She glanced once toward the aircraft, toward its gleaming nose. An engineer's glance, appreciative, not vain. A flight attendant stepped forward, murmuring into her earpiece. Tara gave a brief nod, her tone calm but decisive. Let's not keep them waiting. And then she climbed the steps, one deliberate stride at a time, each echo sinking into the silence inside the cabin. By the time she reached the doorway, every conversation had already stopped. Tara stepped inside, the cabin light catching the faint reflection of rain forming beyond the glass. The air smelled of leather and ozone, that clean, expensive scent that usually belonged to someone else's world. The flight attendant moved aside quickly. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Bennett," Tara nodded. "Thank you." Her voice carried the same calm authority it had in the lounge. Only now, it made perfect sense. Richard rose halfway from his seat, unsure whether to greet her or apologize. Monica didn't move at all. Her hand rested on the silk scarf, the same one that had borne the champagne drop. Fingers stiff, white at the knuckles. Tara's gaze swept the cabin once, polite, measured. Then it met Monica's, not cold, not defiant, simply steady. "Good evening," she said softly. "We meet again." Monica blinked, her composure cracking just enough to reveal disbelief. You're the additional passenger?" "Yes," Tara replied. "I believe Mr. Harlan received my proposal. Bennett Aerotech is finalizing the integration partnership. I thought it best we review in person." Richard finally found his voice. "You're the Bennett?" Tara's smile was faint, professional. "Last I checked, silence pressed into the cabin walls." The engines thrummed, waiting for clearance. Monica recovered just enough to force a brittle laugh. "Well, I must say you do keep yourself versatile." "Sometimes circumstance demands flexibility," Tara answered evenly. "A lesson airports teach better than most places." Richard looked down, almost ashamed, though he wasn't the one who had mocked her. His eyes lingered on the proposal again, suddenly realizing the quiet brilliance behind it. And across from him, Monica Harlan sat perfectly still, her reflection trembling faintly in the glass. Her voice, when it came, was smaller than before. "I didn't realize." Tara's expression softened just enough to be human. "That's all right, Mrs. Harlan. Few people ever do at first." She moved down the aisle, placing a slim briefcase on the polished table between them. The faint click of the latch echoed louder than words. Inside lay neatly arranged documents, blueprints, partnership drafts, and an embossed folder labeled Bennett Aerotech, confidential. Richard straightened, instinctively adjusting his tie. "Your proposal is extraordinary," he said quietly. "Frankly, it's what our board's been waiting for." "I'm glad to hear that," Tara replied, taking her seat across from him. "I prefer discussions at altitude. It clears the noise." Monica watched, frozen, her earlier superiority dissolving into a quiet unease. The woman she had dismissed as unqualified now sat across from her husband as an equal. No, not equal, essential. A flight attendant approached. "We've been cleared for takeoff, Ms. Bennett." "Thank you," Tara said. She turned once more toward Monica, her tone measured, kind but unyielding. "No need for awkwardness. Today was educational for both of us." Monica lowered her gaze, speechless. Outside, the jet's engines roared to life, and the woman she'd underestimated was now leading the flight. Monica sat rigid in her seat, eyes fixed on the window. The city lights below blurred into gold veins against the dark. Her reflection stared back, pale and uneasy. "Tara," she began quietly, testing the name like a fragile bridge. "About earlier, I owe you an apology." Tara looked up from the folder in her lap, expression unreadable. "For what, Mrs. Harlan? For misjudging?" Monica's voice faltered. "It wasn't right." I spoke carelessly. Tara closed the folder, setting it aside with careful grace. "Carelessness is rarely about words," she said gently. "It's about how easily we forget someone's worth until it's proven." Monica nodded, eyes damp, though she masked it with a quick blink. "You handled it with more dignity than I would have," Tara smiled faintly. Dignity isn't the absence of anger. It's choosing when to use it. For a long moment, the only sound was the steady hum of engines, patient, constant, powerful. Richard watched from across the cabin, admiration quietly replacing curiosity. In that suspended space above the world, apology and respect finally shared the same air. Tara fastened her seatbelt loosely, glancing once toward Monica, who still sat quiet, humbled yet thoughtful. Richard had turned back to the proposal, his tone when he spoke now threaded with quiet respect. "You were right," he said. "Altitude clears the noise." Tara's smile was soft, almost private. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the horizon curved in a perfect silver line. Perspective usually does. For a while no one spoke. The world below looked small, cities reduced to sparks, egos to dust. Then Tara turned her head, her voice calm, almost conversational. "You said earlier that some people aren't built for precision," she murmured. "That some should stay on the ground." Monica swallowed, meeting her eyes. Tara's smile deepened slightly. "I suppose I still am, just at 40,000 feet. The engine's low rhythm filled the silence, the music of balance restored, of quiet power reclaimed. Outside, the sunlight caught Tara's reflection in the glass, poised, steady, untouchable. And this time, no one dared look down, and that was the airport encounter, how a grounded woman rose above. A story of quiet power, dignity, and poetic justice among the clouds. If you felt that moment, when silence spoke louder than arrogance, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight?